Hi everyone, hello. Hello. My name is Morag Bruce, or indeed Mo. I'm Editor-in-Chief at AnalogFolk.
And I'm Thomas Scovell. I'm Executive Strategy Director at AnalogFolk.
And we are your content agency, so somewhat unsurprisingly, we are going to champion content and talk about content.
Our mission at AnalogFolk is to use digital to make the analog world better.
But before we get started, we just wanted to do a little test. It's not difficult. I don't think it will be difficult. But just read these questions. How can we solve our business challenges through content? When should we publish content to hit our targets? And which content channels should we use to meet our objectives? We definitely use these sorts of questions every day. I do, I'm sure you do as well. But there's something massive missing from these questions, which is pretty fundamental to the success of any of this. So have a look. Take it in. Okay, we'll come back to this.
So, content. First of all, what actually is content? Is it editorial? Is it advertising? Is it what teams in marketing make? In our industry, we have a habit of needing to label things. We actually love labels. Do you know who doesn't think about labels? Who never thinks to themselves, oh, is this made by a marketing team or an advertising agency, or is it editorial? That's right, the people who actually consume the content. Which is why our talk today is about good content. It's not about you or your labels. So back to that family. There was a time when we could keep what we did in advertising in neat little bundles. You know, when there was advertising, there was content, there was marketing. We knew that, you know, we could put something on TV and a family would gather around their favourite show and they'd sit there for the ad break, diligently watching, and they'd see our advert, and it was great. Well, maybe they'd go and make a cup of tea, but at least back then, most of the time they saw our ads, and most of the time they knew what they were. I want to tell you a story though about, I guess, modern consumers. These are my three adorable little nieces. I got to visit them back in New Zealand at Christmas time, in case you haven't guessed the accent yet. Yes, New Zealand. So I was sitting there, in fact that's my wife, there sitting with my nieces, and watching them, as kids do these days, grab our phones and go, YouTube, YouTube. And so we let little 3-year-old sit there, gave her YouTube Kids, safe content. And you know, she sat there and played a video she wanted, and an advert came up with, of course, the skip button. And she clicked the skip button. She was 3 years old and she knew what the skip button was. I was like, hey, hold on, that's so clever, hun, but you know, Uncle Thomas makes money from advertising. Could you not do that? It gets worse though. This 7-year-old, bless her, chimed in with this. Ads, I've never seen a good one. To be honest, I don't know if she's seen an ad. And that's actually kind of the point. Because apparently, in households that have Netflix, over 80% of young people can't even describe what a TV advert is. They don't even know what an ad is. Bless them. It's a little bit better when it comes to adults, of course, because we all know, historically at least, what an advert is, right? We've seen enough. Unfortunately, we've seen enough in our lifetime that we love technology that lets us block them, which is why ad blockers are so damn popular. I mean, I'm going to be honest, in our own agency, people use ad blockers. I sit there, I'm like, dude, you work in advertising. Come on, what's going on? At least see what people say. No. Everyone has ad blockers, right? And unfortunately, these days, everyone has ad blockers, even on their mobile phones. It's almost ubiquitous. And the thing is, I guess from a consumer point of view, that's kind of good because they're not just inundated in adverts without ad blockers, but they're inundated in content options just every single minute of the day. Something like 46,000 Instagram posts get made every single minute. 527,000 Snapchats get sent. 4 million YouTube videos get watched in a single minute. Ad blocking and competing with them is one of the reasons for the rise of what we call native advertising. It's a euphemism, yes. It's basically something that sort of looks and feels like organic content but is sponsored by a brand. As this headline depicts, slightly depressingly, 74% of all ad revenue will come from native advertising by 2021. Now, you might go, oh gosh, that's terrible, people are being tricked into watching adverts they don't know they are, it's out of their control, etc. But actually, most people are aware that they're seeing native adverts of sponsored content, and they're actually surprisingly quite happy about that, or at least, bless them, millennials. 85% of millennials say that native advertising is as good, if not better than, the other content in their feeds. Now, I'm not sure what else is in their feeds, probably pictures of cats and, you know, their ex-girlfriend's baby or something, I don't know, but apparently Apparently, they prefer the adverts to most of what else they see. So which is kind of okay. It's kind of good news for brands, right? Because we can compete with that. They're not totally turned off by things that they see from us. The thing is, though, whilst we're not necessarily competing with, ex-girlfriend baby pics or small fluffy dogs, though in some ways we are competing with some very clever, creative content. This example here on the left, a kid who asked Wendy's, you may remember this from last year, for free nuggets for a year. He asked them how many retweets it would take. They said 18 million. He only got 4 million. But he also got, millions of pounds worth of earned media. And then, of course, BBC's biggest video on YouTube last year, what was it? No, not one of their stories, but a video of one of their stories being interrupted by an adorable kid. You can't create that kind of content intentionally, right? And then last but not least, Vice magazine's live stream from last year, where literally millions of people watched ice creams melt. That's what we're competing with, unfortunately.
Yeah, so you are competing with melting ice creams. There's nothing we can really help with that, but that's not all you're competing with. As we see here, influencers. These are individuals who behave like brands, and of course they have a lot of influence, hence the name, it's not a trick. So what kind of following are we up against here? Take Forbes' top 20 tech and entertainment influencers of 2017. What do you reckon their following was? A couple of million, 5 million? Actually, dropped to zero there, but over 250 million. Now that's obviously quite a lot of influence, but that is what we're up against. And as Thomas said, in amongst the mix of content that people will be engaging with will be paid, organic, everything, and they don't mind. They absolutely don't mind. It's worth reading everything. And the reason it's worth them reading everything, whether it is a paid piece or organic, is because there's an expectation of quality, and that relationship has been built up over time, and it's trust. The audience knows that the piece of content has been designed with them in mind, and that's really, really powerful. That's a relationship. It's a value exchange. But that's not really actually the biggest thing that influencers do, and the thing that they really nail as individuals. They have spotted a niche. Even in, you look at the world of food or the world of fashion, you think it's massively saturated. But these individuals have managed to find a niche, find a way of being, of living their brand in that space. And that's what gets the loyalty, and that's what gets the attention. They have a unique point of view in their space. So with all of that in mind, let's just come back to this set of questions that we looked at the start, which is about solving our business challenges and our targets and our objectives. There's something massive wrong with this, obviously, getting a little bit clearer. I can't emphasize it anymore, but ultimately, it's the wrong focus. And when we speak, when we think, when we plan, when we brief, when we do every single thing in our day jobs, we should all be thinking like this. What kind of content does our audience love? When does our audience prefer to engage with content, and which channels does our audience use most? Because when you think like that and work like that and brief like that and plan like that, everything else falls into place. So what are your audience going to think? What are they going to feel, and what are they going to do? So, let's hooray for audience first content. Let's do it. But actually, what is it? How do we do it? So we've got tips, haven't we, Thomas, for making audience first content?
So, tip 1. No. Be part of the conversation. So successful human interaction, it's not about shouting, it's not coming from on high, it's about coming down to someone's level and actually getting to understand their point of view. It's about sharing, it's about creating, as Mo was talking about, a value exchange. You each need to relinquish a little power, and that can be tough as a brand. But by creating content that becomes part of an audience's conversations, not just content that they consume, you become truly valuable in their lives. Take PG Tips. Now, I'm sure you'll agree they have the most adorable spokesman out there. Look at that guy. We all know, and most of us love him. So when they wanted to connect with more tea drinkers in the morning, they came to us and they said, look, maybe some Facebook posts, we've got this new range of morning teas, can you sort of feature them? And we were like, cool, yeah, we can do that, we can use Monkey, but maybe just using him to present products is not necessarily the way forward. Let's see what else we can do. So instead, we created a series of playful GIFs. Not things that we posted as adverts, but things we created that expressed the various emotions you felt in the morning, which individuals could take themselves and use in their conversations. And we saw that. We just put these out there for people to use. And if someone was having a terrible commute, they could grab the bottom one in their tweet to express how they were feeling. And they did. They'd love to share them. They love to use them in their conversations, to the point where we've had 148 million organic views of these. Now, they're relatively low branded, but of course people know the Monkey, so they know it's PG tips, and they get used by consumers having conversations with other consumers. So we instantly become part of those conversations in a really positive way, without necessarily shouting at them as traditional advertising would, or traditional content might. Be human. Audiences are time poor these days, sure, but they can smell a rat. They pay enough attention to content to tell when something's a little bit off. They've got a vast choice, but they don't care, as we said, whether it's created by a brand or created by a person. They just want it to feel natural for whoever that brand or whoever that person is. If it doesn't feel that way, it just doesn't work, it doesn't land. There are some classic cases of this, I'm sure many of you are aware, but we should maybe take a second to consider this particular example. So, on the day Carrie Fisher died, Cinnabon decided it was a good idea to use that incident to promote their pastries. I tried reading this out. It's actually interesting. This is 2 years ago. It's even worse in the current context. R.I.P. Carrie Fisher, you'll always have the best buns in the galaxy. It's just multiple levels of wrong. And it's pretty hard to get worse than that. But to be honest, a lot of brands, they go there. It's the equivalent of a dad joke, right? But as a brand, you shouldn't try and be a dad. You shouldn't try and be cool. You should just try and be natural for who your brand is, for your brand personality. Now, that is one of the hardest things to work out. We know BT are currently going through this, trying to understand what the brand stands for, what its personality is. But once you do that, you just need to be true to it. So another story. This is great. So I'm an ex-vegan, so I appreciate both sides of this story. So someone last year ranted on Instagram that Sainsbury's vegan cheese shouldn't be called cheese because it's not actually cheese. Now, they are correct. They obviously were quite passionate about this because they ranted on Instagram, which is like this. That's just madness. And they left us with this nugget, though. Call it anything. Call it whatever you want. Don't call it cheese. Heck, call it Gary. No. We could have just left that alone because clearly anyone reading this knows crazy. However, we saw this as an opportunity. So what do? Within 6 hours, we'd gone to Sainsbury's and renamed their vegan cheese Gary. And we did a rebranding job. We posted immediately on social media about that. It received millions of organic views of the tweet, but we followed through on this because people liked the joke. If they hadn't liked the joke, they hadn't got it, it would have just stopped there. It would have been a bit of fun. But no, people loved it. So we actually went and repackaged the cheese and called it Gary, which earned us millions of dollars worth of earned media. And more importantly, this is about selling vegan cheese, sales were up 300% on predictions, which is amazing. In fact, it could have gone higher if they hadn't sold out. And so they're now increasing distribution of Gary the cheese, which is great.
The last tip we have for you is actually probably one of the most important, really, which is helping your audience care about your content. Because after all, you've got like 1.7 seconds at a push. How are you going to get them to stop and read what it is you're posting? You have to help them care, to show that it's worth them investing their time and emotion in what you're saying. Now, one audience, of course, that we know and you know, that really does that, lives it, is the football fan. So passionately devoted to their team, watch every game, even if it's not their team, actually. So that's fantastic news for BT Sport. Devoted viewers. Until, unfortunately, they'd also have a habit of cancelling their subscription when summer comes because no football. It's absolutely devastating for everyone. But we know actually there's no reason to be upset football fans, grieving football fans, because there are plenty of exciting sports for which the summer is actually their big time, and many of which are actually exclusive to BT Sport. So we thought, well, they're passionate sports fans. In a nutshell, that's what they are. So let's get them involved in other sports. It's not just about football. So what we've done, if it's going to work. Yeah, so we understand that actually football fandom is about more than just the match. It's about understanding and following your team's story, and actually the player's story as well, the individual journeys they've all gone through. People will follow them through their entire career and know everything about them. So we thought, let's transfer that behaviour to other sports they might actually know nothing about. So we created a series of backstory films about speedway, about tennis, about hockey, and about boxing, which we delivered through the BT Sport weekly email. We made films, and they were, as I say, they were teased in the email. Now, BT had never done that before. BT had never actually made exclusive content that was primarily going to be served through the email. But we knew, and BT were on board with it as well, we knew that if you surprise the customer and you show them what the actually great quality content is in an unexpected place, they'll absorb it, and they did, and they engaged with it. I've got a lag. Oh, sorry for the formatting. So back to these. What's interesting about My Sport DNA as a content series is actually it nails all of these tips. So first one, it does say be part of the conversation there. These films are sent to audiences at the point of the event happening, the sporting event happening. So it's relevant and it's part of any conversation. Brave, as I say, BT had never done this before. They'd never invested in content that was going to be sent out on email. And be human. There's, for me, nothing more human than actually telling a story and going deeper rather than just saying this match is on. Actually, we have gone in and said, can you believe this story of this fighter from nothing to this great sporting heroism? And more importantly of all, they care. So the audience that we're sending these emails to and who are watching these films really do care. And we know that because we've seen open rates now of the email averaging 36%, which is more than 10% higher than the industry benchmark.
So there we have it. If we embrace an audience-first approach to content creation,
and we stop getting bogged down in labels, because they're not,
we can come in a happy second place to cat gifts. Okay, folks, I have an addendum and want to ask...